the table, what you're really looking at in terms of program cuts would be athletics. At 2.9, you're cutting athletics out. And at 2.3, athletics is still in. So I just want you to know that up front. That's really the difference. But again, that's going back to
They
your
cut 'em
worst
back in
case
the
scenario. Pardon?
They cut them back in the 80s. And the high school went to 5 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers were on strike for 6 weeks out in the front.
Any other questions on the table?
Not on the table per se.
I don't see how we're going to come up with.
Talking about, ways we need to think out of the box to balance the budget, what Tom just referred to. I mean, yes, it's drastic, but do we need to look at reduced school days and things of that nature?
Well, that was a suggestion. We're not allowed to.
We got to stay at the 180.
We have to stay at the minimum, at the number of school days that we had, I believe it was 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So then that's 180. We can't reduce that. And going back to, because some people might think, well, if we went to 5-hour days, like you did in the 80s, and I was a teacher in a school district that did the same thing in the early 80s, a lot of districts did that, that is no longer an option either. The reason it's not is because in the 80s, the only requirement for schools was to have a certain number of days. There was no hour requirement.
Right.
Now
So
there's
they're
days
doing-
and hours, so that can't be a solution anymore.
Well, I know went back there, they took out, it was pretty much all you had was the basic.
Oh, yes.
There was
No
basic-
art, no music.
Right.
No
A
And,
lot of the electives
sports.
were gone.
yeah, and also too, didn't with the new Michigan requirements, the kids have to have for fine arts, and so we're talking about, possibly eliminating music, or, but you can't do that.
It's
I
pretty
mean,
tough to do.
It's tough to do it, so,
And again, it doesn't save you any money, because the kids have to go somewhere. And so whether they're in a music class or a social studies class, the cost of the board is very similar.
Right.
So those are not viable options anymore. Is there anything else that you want me to add to the list of possible cuts? You mentioned thinking out of the box.
Staffing,
Closing another building.
and what staffing proposals are you making?
It was mentioned last meeting.
Well, closing a building was mentioned last meeting as something we needed to be thinking about for 2012, 13, 14.
I think we need to look at it for
Unless
12
we're
and
looking at
13.
a
If
$6
you're-
million budget.
You're looking at 200 students less, we may need to start thinking about it now.
But I thought I saw Corey on here, building
Corey's
closure.
not an operating
Oh,
school.
I'm not talking about moving the adult ed to Corey, even though that was discussed as well. I'm talking about eliminating another elementary school.
That's what
Oh,
you
yeah,
talked
okay.
about last time. I
So
don't
you're
think-
talking about going from 4 to 3.
Absolutely.
One of the problems that we'll have in doing that is that will drastically increase our transportation costs.
We're cutting transportation, so that becomes moot.
Well, that's true, if it's cut.
I mean, I'm not trying to be argumentative.
No.
but
No,
We're cutting
no.
that, if we're going drastic,
Yeah, I mean,
it is what it is.
Actually, your transportation costs, I don't think would increase for the simple reason, you're gonna have the buses, and they're gonna pick up more kids on them instead of being half or 3/4 full.
Crisscrossing, passing each other.
Well, you're gonna have kids, that are bused. A majority of the kids are at their neighborhood school, so the busing is minimal. Now they're gonna go across town.
They'll
So-
have longer bus rides, yeah.
right.
Well, and you're gonna have more cost because it's more hours for the driver and more bus miles. So it will go up. And so, estimated, when we did this in 2010, the estimated savings of closing a building was about $500,000. And I'm not sure we'd have to do a more accurate projection of the transportation increase, but I bet you'd lose about half of that. If you just look at the cost per building of transportation.
Yeah, but when you close
We're
the
not sure
building,
we have the capacity.
when you close the building, you're talking about the savings that's coming off of what, utilities and stuff? Or is that
Utilities,
utilities
custodial, and
Staff.
administrators, basically.
And
that's it.
staffing?
Yeah. Now, you really don't save in teachers because they're just gonna move somewhere else with the kids, but you save in an administrator.
It's,
That's assuming that those families stay with us.
Well, and it's also assuming that, I'm not sure that we would have enough time. I mean, we did a pretty good job with the redistricting last time, and
That
we had
was
minimal
We started like,
7-8 month
pushback. We started in
process.
November.
Yeah.
that's what
Well,
This would be very difficult, and that's why I suggested that we
Right.
look at that a year out.
if we're looking at possibility of 5 million, I don't think we need to hold up anymore. I think it needs to be started, worked on now. And if we don't need it, fine. But I don't think we need to wait and say, well, let's do it in 13, 14. If we're talking about a possible $5 million, we need to look at everything.
We're talking about losing students.
And
if we
you're
close
talking,
the
yeah,
school.
student
Cut
enrollment
transportation
is
in
down.
sports and see how many we lose.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
exactly,
more.
yeah.
Yes.
I know the price of fuel is killing out there, it's killing
Right.
everybody, no matter what you do. School districts or people going back and forth to work, but, you know, it's a huge expense, but, you know, maybe that's something we need to look at now as consolidating one of the schools now, and that way it's ready for September, because with the $5 million, I mean, we can't, what are we gonna do if we keep a school open and then we're $5 million short
So-
next year? That will be, what,
I
70
guess,
million?
I guess I need, and maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, all right. I've got,
You asked for
what-
recommendations, that's what
well,
I'm
right,
giving you.
and that can go on the list.
Okay.
I've got adding, closing a school, an elementary school, not a vacant building or
Right.
anything else. We'll add that to the list and we'll come up with a cost projection. Just so we're clear on the direction of the board, I've got the dollar amounts.
Yeah.
And so what we'll have for you on the 16th is an updated spreadsheet like this with our recommendations with the two columns. Like I said, one will get us to the $2.9 million target. The other one will get us to the 5.3 million.
Yeah.
Okay,
Actually,
question
they-
on that, when you do that column and you do the school, make sure that's projected for September of this year to start.
Right.
Because honestly, I don't think it'd be smart to wait till next year.
Yeah, well, the spreadsheet says 12, 13 suggestions, so that,
And also, another question for Sherry on transportation, I'm wondering, when they come up with these numbers, that is basically fuel, employees, salaries, maintenance, estimated maintenance costs
On the buses.
on the buses?
Correct.
Okay. So potentially, the way the economy is going and the fuel prices, that could potentially even go up even higher
Oh, yeah.
versus
Oh, yeah.
because of the fuel costs.
Carl, have you guys heard
think it's
anything
fun here. You see it ours.
from Head Start and Burton Center about?
We have a meeting with them Wednesday?
Tuesday, actually,
Tomorrow.
tomorrow.
In the afternoon.
Sue and I met with them last week, a different, these are
yeah.
the guidance center folks who run Head Start, and just had some preliminary discussion about moving them. And they asked for Sherry doesn't know this yet, but they asked for a floor plan of Corey, so
Oh, that's nice.
I think they're interested.
The guidance center gets a lot of people
Oh,
through
yeah.
there.
They do a lot of,
Uh-huh.
they have a lot of services.
Is that the one that's headquartered over
In
on
Southgate.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and they do quite a bit of wraparound and
Yeah.
all
They
kinds
do
of
a
stuff.
lot out here around Belleville.
because-
Well, and
My point was gonna be, if we haven't heard from them, we probably need to seriously look at moving the adult community in,
Right.
like we had discussed.
Yeah.
Hate to do it, but
Yeah, I was thinking we just moved them, but
any other questions relative to the dollar amounts?
no,
Other
I'm
issues?
Not to dollar amounts, but our meeting on the 16th, is it gonna be strictly based on just going over the budget?
That's our regular study session.
Yeah.
Or are we,
Actually,
we have,
the
because I
plan-
think
the-
we need a full meeting just to go over
Well,
all the stuff.
thank you.
the plan was actually, that was gonna be half split, but that's not, nobody has to leave early at that one.
no.
My suggestion, what you
don't
may
know.
want to do to have a lengthy discussion of both, because we really need to get through the policy also, depending on how far we get tonight. We're still on track. What we may want to do is start at 5 or 5:30 again, so that we can go a little bit longer and get through both issues, if that's what the board wants to do.
I'm not a fan of starting meetings, especially our regularly scheduled meetings, prior to 6 o'clock. We state in our annual calendar that they start at 6, and I'm just not a fan.
Well, if we've got that much work, actually, probably starting at 5 would be the best, and if we announce it to the public, at least we're giving them advance warning, because we're talking the 16th, we're still talking a couple weeks,
Yeah.
telling if we post it and everything else, but honestly,
No,
I mean,
only
if we're
one.
here till 9 o'clock, we're only gonna get 3 hours. We're here till, we start at 5, we can get a good 4 hours probably.
Well, and to be honest with you, I want to correct something that you said, Rob. The 16th is not a regular study session. That meeting
know,
was,
we bumped
that
it.
meeting was added as a budget special,
Yeah, because
study.
actually next week would have.
Yeah, the
Right.
9th.
You're correct.
So starting early wouldn't be violating our annual calendar or
If
anything.
5 o'clock works for everybody, honestly, if we announce it to everybody,
I can accept that.
I mean, I think it'd be a smart idea.
So
That's fine
make
with
a
me.
note.
The 16th was at 5, right? So that had-
No, we had it at.
It was at
It was
6.
at 6.
Yeah, we did the other two because Tom had to leave at 6:30, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And because stakeholders is on
23rd.
Tuesday, it won't mess up stakeholders.
Okay.
So it should give us a little more. Now, Teresa, I just want to make sure I understand. When you say you need a more in-depth discussion, you're just anticipating that when it comes to this list and saying, pick this one, not this one, that's
Well,
going
just
to
so
take
that we
more
can have
time.
More time.
Yeah, I got you.
discuss it.
Okay, that's kind of the way I interpret
there
it.
may be one board member that says, increase adult education courses, another one says no. So why?
Right.
Maybe Danielle's argument may convince me to go with hers, or maybe I convince her to go with mine.
Well, I think we know from prior experience, and nobody is new, that this is the hardest part, is figuring out what stays on the list and what doesn't go on the list. That's very
But
challenging.
when you have the list come out with all these other things prior to the 6th, we are gonna get that list prior to the 16th, correct?
I can get it out to you next week.
Okay, and that's also gonna have staffing, will that have the staffing positions, estimated positions that'll be lost too? Is that also gonna be
Well,
on there?
right now,
It's
we're
already
looking at,
included.
it's 7
Yeah,
FTE
and that's already
teachers.
included in the budget.
We're still working on the master schedules at the,
Well,
you know, 'cause-
like I'm saying, for example, say we eliminate athletics, how many employees would that impact?
well, it would impact the
Those are all-
coaches.
Yeah, those are all scheduled.
Yeah, they're
That's
scheduled
part
to
of
be.
They're just supplementary, that's a supplementary, it's not.
Yeah,
part of
and
the
that's
cost.
in the cost
It
already.
would only really be one individual, and that would be the athletic
Yeah.
director, so.
What I
that's I'm
can't,
talking about.
what I can't give you on staffing is what our projection is with some of these things on this list, because once the board makes a determination on a few of these things in terms of classes, and once we fully assess, we're working with Hal and Jason on the minimum class sizes and how much that's going to save us. So that number will become more accurate with a little more time. My guess would be by the end of April, we pretty much have that down, wouldn't you say?
Would
But
that be more-
right now, we're looking at seven teacher FTEs, just based on a 200 student drop.
And when you say minimum class size, you're saying that because of the number of students, that the minimum number we need to hold that class is how you're referring to.
Right, in other words,
Okay.
we don't hold classes now for 10 kids.
Well, I just want
but-
to make sure we got a
yeah.
clarification on how you're
Yeah.
using minimum, and that's why, I just want to
Okay.
make sure that.
So it doesn't get forgotten to be brought up when we're talking about scheduling, April 23rd, our regular monthly meeting. That
That's at
can't
6.
start before 6.
That's at 6.
That's the day of the governor's education summit. that
Right,
lasts
you'll be
until
coming
4.
Oh, yeah, you
Yeah.
guys need travel time coming back,
So
yeah.
the 16th,
I
are we
have a
starting
heavy
at?
you don't
foot,
have
but
wings?
not that heavy.
16th at 5.
We don't want you getting
I only have
arrested.
Romulus
Glad you guys
on
reminded me about the
speed dial.
16th. Okay.
I have another question. When we do our stakeholders meetings, are we kind of elaborating to what if it doesn't pass?
No, we haven't, because if you remember when I did the presentation that I'm sharing, well, that I shared with the stakeholders group at the first meeting, we were told not to mention what we were going to cut. We didn't want it to look like we were threatening any particular
Remember that
group or
conversation.
program.
Yeah.
So we've eliminated that section. Now, I have to tell you, when I was at Hill Creek, I was asked that question.
I think they need to know.
But we don't have an answer for them.
Well, and
We will
really,
by the 17th,
can-
right?
Well, the
But you-
groups that I've
but we
already
still
done, though,
have a-
I've had to say, the board is
Right.
having major discussions about that. We're having meetings in terms of budget, and it will be discussed over the
but
next month.
the focus of the stakeholders meetings have been to
Promote it, I know.
promote the election, also look for other ways to communicate the message,
Yeah.
so that we don't miss anything.
But I know the biggest question they're gonna get asked, and it's the same question you get asked, is if it doesn't pass.
Yeah, I did get asked
Well,
that.
and I think probably communicating that in the little paper and in some other ways, we can get at that,
Yeah.
so
I-
it's
Well-
clear.
I just think that it's important, we talk about, this millage and how important it is. One of my inner conflicts is the fact that, okay, so we're asking for a hold harmless, but we're still talking almost $2 to $3 million that we will still